Have you ever wondered if a single moment of courage could unlock a lifetime of hidden strength? What if I told you that a weathered military handbook left behind by a quiet night janitor would not only change his destiny, but awaken the buried honor in one of Chicago's most ruthless corporate leaders? If you believe that sometimes the most powerful transformations happen when two warriors from different battles finally recognize each other, give this video a like right now and subscribe to our channel. What you're about to discover will forever change how you see the invisible heroes walking among us every day. This is the story of Daniel Martinez, a man carrying wounds that Purple Hearts can't heal, and Victoria Sterling, a CEO who had forgotten that true leadership requires more than just commanding from the top. It's a reminder that you don't need rank or title to teach someone about real courage. You just need to leave behind something that speaks to the warrior's heart. Sometimes a book, a single page of wisdom, is enough to help someone remember who they used to be. And I promise by the end of this story, you'll discover a connection between these two souls that will leave you speechless about the mysterious ways fate brings the right people together at exactly the right moment. Stay with me to witness their extraordinary journey. In the shadow of Chicago's gleaming Willis Tower, when the city's heartbeat slows to a whisper and office lights flicker out one by one, Daniel Martinez moves through the corridors of Sterling Industries like a ghost, seeking redemption. At 34, with graying temples that came too early and hands that still sometimes shake when sirens wail in the distance, Daniel carries himself with the precise movements of someone who once knew exactly where he belonged in the world. The night shift at Sterling Industries pays $16.50 an hour, enough to cover his studio apartment in Pilsen and the medications that help him sleep without reliving Kandahar. 3 years ago, Staff Sergeant Daniel Martinez led a squad of 12 brave souls through the mountains of Afghanistan. Today, he empties wastebaskets and sanitizes conference rooms where men in expensive suits make decisions that will never require them to look into a mother's eyes and explain why her son isn't coming home. His routine is methodical, almost ritualistic. Start on the 20th floor at 11 p.m. sharp. Work downward through the maze of cubicles and corner offices. Finish in the lobby by 6 a.m. He wears noise-cancelling headphones that play Spanish guitar music, the gentle melodies his grandmother used to hum while making tamales in her tiny kitchen in Pilsen. The music helps drown out the sudden sounds that can send him spiraling back to IED explosions and midnight raids. Sterling Industries occupies a sleek glass tower on West Madison Street, its logo a silver eagle with wings spread wide, illuminated against the Chicago skyline. The company built its empire on government defense contracts before expanding into cybersecurity and private military consulting. Under Victoria Sterling's iron-fisted leadership over the past 8 years, the company had grown from a mid-sized contractor to a billion-dollar corporation, earning her the nickname the Ice Queen of Corporate America in Forbes magazine. Most nights, Daniel encounters only the skeleton crew of security guards and fellow cleaners, exchanging silent nods. In fluorescent-lit hallways, the executives whose offices he cleans remain faceless names on brass nameplates. Victoria Sterling, CEO; Marcus Chen, Chief Technology Officer; Sarah Rodriguez, Head of Operations. To them, he's invisible, just another uniform that ensures their world stays pristine while they're away. Daniel's apartment reflects the life of someone still learning how to live in peacetime. The walls are bare except for a single photograph of his squad taken 3 days before the ambush that changed everything. His furniture consists of a military-issued cot, a folding table, and a small bookshelf containing his most precious possessions. A collection of military field manuals, leadership guides, and tactical handbooks that once made sense of a chaotic world. Hidden beneath a stack of VA appointment letters and disability claim paperwork sites his most treasured possession, a leather-bound copy of The Warrior Ethos by Stephen Pressfield, its pages worn soft from countless readings. The book had been a gift from Colonel James Sterling, his commanding officer, presented during a ceremony honoring Daniel's Bronze Star for valor. Inside the front cover, in the colonel's distinctive handwriting, were the words, "To Daniel, a warrior who understands that true courage isn't the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. Lead from the front always. Your friend and commander, J. Sterling." Colonel Sterling had been more than a commanding officer. He had been a mentor, a father figure to a young soldier from Chicago's South Side who had enlisted to escape poverty and found purpose in serving something greater than himself. The colonel taught him that leadership wasn't about barking orders, but about earning trust through shared sacrifice. That a true warrior protects those who cannot protect themselves. That honor isn't something you wear on your uniform, but something you carry in your heart. The ambush happened on a Tuesday. Daniel's squad was escorting a convoy of medical supplies to a remote village when insurgents attacked from the surrounding hills. In the chaos of gunfire and explosions, Daniel made a split-second decision that saved 11 lives but cost him everything he thought he was. He carried a wounded private through a minefield while under heavy fire, taking shrapnel in his left leg and a concussion that left him with persistent headaches and PTSD that no Purple Heart could heal. Colonel Sterling died 2 weeks later in a separate attack, and Daniel's world collapsed. Without his mentor's steady guidance, the military felt like a machine designed to create killers rather than protectors. He took an early discharge and returned to Chicago, carrying nothing but his small collection of books and a soul-deep confusion about who he was supposed to be in a world that didn't require his particular set of skills. The job at Sterling Industries was supposed to be temporary, just something to pay the bills while he figured out his next move. But 3 years had passed, and Daniel had settled into the comfortable invisibility of night work. No one asked about his limp or why he sometimes froze when helicopters flew overhead. No one expected him to lead or make life or death decisions. He could simply exist in the quiet spaces between other people's important lives. During his breaks, Daniel would find his way to the building's eastern stairwell, settling on the cold concrete steps with his worn copy of The Warrior Ethos. The book had become his anchor, a reminder of who he used to be before the world became too loud and complicated. In the emergency lighting's soft glow, he would read passages about honor, courage, and the warrior's responsibility to something greater than self-interest. The warrior and the artist live by the same code of necessity, he would whisper to himself, reciting passages he had memorized. They must follow their calling regardless of whether anyone else believes in it. Sometimes he wondered if Colonel Sterling would be proud of the man he had become, or disappointed that his protégé had chosen invisibility over leadership. On this particular November night, as Chicago's early winter pressed against the building's windows, Daniel pushed his cart into the executive floor. The air felt different here, rarefied with power and decisions that shaped thousands of lives. Victoria Sterling's corner office dominated the northeastern corner of the building, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Lake Michigan and the city's twinkling lights. Company gossip painted Sterling as ruthless and calculating, a woman who had inherited her late father's company and transformed it through sheer force of will and strategic brilliance. At 41, she had never married, dedicating herself entirely to building an empire that honored her father's legacy while surpassing his wildest dreams. Employees spoke in hushed tones about Sterling's stare, the icy look that preceded terminations, and her legendary 14-hour workdays that left even the most ambitious executives exhausted. The office itself was a monument to controlled power, a glass desk that seemed to float in space, ergonomic furniture arranged with military precision, and walls lined with awards from defense industry associations. No family photos softened the space. No personal touches revealed the woman behind the corporate facade. Everything suggested a mind focused entirely on the mission, whatever that mission might be. As Daniel began his cleaning routine, moving efficiently through the space with practiced quiet, his book slipped from his jacket pocket and landed with a soft thud on Sterling's pristine desk. He placed it aside carefully, intending to retrieve it before finishing the office. But as he worked, the distant sound of voices echoed from the hallway. Security guards making their rounds with someone Daniel couldn't identify. Instinct took over, the old soldier's training that never fully disappeared. Daniel grabbed his cart and moved toward the service exit, muscle memory guiding him to safety before his conscious mind could process the potential threat. Only as the elevator doors closed behind him did he realize his mistake. Colonel Sterling's book remained behind, sitting like a secret on the CEO's desk, waiting to bridge two worlds that had been kept carefully apart. The next morning arrived gray and cold, November wind cutting through Chicago's downtown corridors like a blade. Daniel had spent the day tossing restlessly in his narrow bed, anxiety gnawing at his stomach as he imagined the consequences of leaving personal property in the CEO's office. He had seen good soldiers discharged for smaller infractions, and civilian jobs offered even less protection for those who broke the unspoken rules. As he arrived for his evening shift, already composing apologies and explanations in his head, he found Rebecca Martinez waiting by the service elevator. Tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly rent, Rebecca served as Victoria Sterling's executive assistant and gatekeeper. Her reputation among the cleaning staff was legendary, polite but impenetrable, efficient but utterly without warmth. "Mr. Martinez," she said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made Daniel's spine straighten automatically. "Miss Sterling requests your presence in her office immediately." Her dark eyes studied him with the intensity of someone accustomed to reading people's weaknesses and cataloguing them for future use. "And please bring your book." "Ma'am, I don't have—" Daniel began, but Rebecca raised one perfectly manicured hand. "She has it," Rebecca interrupted. "20th floor, now." The elevator ride felt like ascending toward a court-martial. Daniel's hands, steady enough to disarm explosives under enemy fire, trembled slightly as he watched the floor numbers climb. Through the elevator's glass walls, Chicago's skyline sparkled in the dying light, beautiful and indifferent to the small human dramas playing out in its shadow. Rebecca's desk stood guard outside massive double doors made of dark wood that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Without looking up from her computer, she pressed a button on her desk phone. "He's here, Ms. Sterling." The voice that responded through the intercom was crisp, controlled, revealing nothing. "Send him in." Daniel pushed open the heavy doors and stepped into the lion's den, every instinct screaming that he was walking into an ambush he couldn't escape. Victoria Sterling stood silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows, her back to Daniel, as she gazed out at the city sprawling beneath them. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across her office, and in her left hand she held his book like evidence in a trial he didn't know he was facing. Without turning, she spoke, her voice cutting through the silence with surgical precision. "Are you in the habit of leaving personal items in executives' offices, Mr. Martinez?" Her tone carried no anger, only a detached curiosity that somehow felt more dangerous than outright hostility. Daniel's military training kicked in automatically, spine straightening, hands clasped behind his back in a position of attention that felt both foreign and familiar in this corporate battlefield. "No, ma'am," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "It was an accident. I apologize for the breach of protocol." The office around him seemed designed to intimidate, all clean lines and expensive materials that whispered of power and influence. Abstract paintings in muted blues and greys adorned the walls, and a collection of crystal awards caught the dying light from the windows. But what struck Daniel most was the complete absence of warmth, as if the space had been designed by someone who had forgotten that offices were meant for human beings rather than chess pieces. She turned then, and Daniel found himself looking into eyes the color of winter steel, sharp and assessing. Victoria Sterling was smaller than he had expected, perhaps 5'6" in her designer heels, but she carried herself with the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her charcoal suit was tailored with military precision. An accident, she repeated, studying him with the intensity of a general evaluating an unknown enemy. And yet, quite a specific accident, wouldn't you say? She opened the book to its first page, where Colonel Sterling's inscription remained visible in faded blue ink. Daniel's heart stopped as she read aloud. To Daniel, a warrior who understands that true courage isn't the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. Lead from the front, always. Your friend and commander, J. Sterling. The air in the room seemed to evaporate. Daniel blinked hard, trying to process what he was hearing, his mind racing through possibilities and connections that seemed impossible. Victoria Sterling's expression had changed subtly, the corporate mask slipping just enough to reveal something raw and unguarded beneath. James Sterling was my father, she said quietly, her voice losing its edge for the first time since Daniel had entered the room. The words hit Daniel like shrapnel, fragments of memory and grief exploding through his carefully constructed defenses. He stared at the woman behind the desk, searching her features for traces of the man who had shaped his understanding of honor and leadership. The steel-gray eyes, the sharp jawline, the way she held herself with absolute certainty even in the face of the impossible. Colonel Sterling, Daniel whispered, the name carrying the weight of reverence and loss. He was your father. Victoria moved to her desk, setting the book down with careful deliberation. Her hands, Daniel noticed, were shaking almost imperceptibly, the only sign that this revelation had shattered her composure as much as his own. "Tell me about him," she said, sinking into her chair as if the weight of memory had suddenly become too much to bear standing. "Tell me about the man who gave you this book." For a moment, Daniel forgot about corporate hierarchies and the vast gulf between their worlds. He saw only a daughter hungry for stories about a father she had lost, and something in her vulnerability called to the part of him that had once known how to lead, how to comfort, how to carry others through their darkest moments. "He was the finest officer I ever served under," Daniel began, his voice growing stronger with each word. "Colonel Sterling didn't just command respect, he earned it. Every decision he made, every order he gave, you knew it came from someone who valued your life as much as his own." Victoria's corporate facade continued to crack, revealing glimpses of the person she kept hidden beneath layers of professional armor. She leaned forward slightly, hanging on his every word like a soldier desperate for news from the front lines. "He talked about leadership differently than other officers," Daniel continued. "Said that true power wasn't about making people fear you, but about making them believe in something bigger than themselves. He used to say that a real leader's job was to create more leaders, not more followers." "The warrior ethos," Victoria said suddenly, touching the book's cover. "He used to read passages to me when I was young, before the military consumed his life completely." Daniel felt the familiar ache of loss, the wound that 3 years had failed to heal. "He gave me this book during the Bronze Star ceremony. Said, I reminded him of someone back home who had the same fire in her eyes. He never mentioned a daughter, but he talked sometimes about teaching someone to be strong enough to carry on the family legacy. Victoria stood abruptly, walking to a wall safe Daniel hadn't noticed before. Her fingers moved across the digital keypad with practiced efficiency, and the heavy door swung open to reveal a collection of military memorabilia. She withdrew a framed photograph and set it on the desk between them. The image showed a much younger Victoria, perhaps 16, standing beside Colonel Sterling in his dress uniform. She wore a high school graduation cap and gown, her smile radiant with pride and possibility. The resemblance was unmistakable now that Daniel knew to look for it, but it was the expression in her eyes that caught his attention. The same fierce intelligence and determination he had seen in her father, tempered by youth and hope. This was taken the day before he deployed for his final tour, Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper. I was valedictorian, full scholarship to Wharton, the whole world ahead of me. He told me I was going to change the world someday, that I had the strength to build something that would outlast us both. He was proud of you, Daniel said with quiet certainty. He never mentioned your name, but he talked about someone who was going to carry on everything he believed in, someone who understood that real strength comes from protecting others, not from power over them. Victoria's composure finally broke completely. Tears, she had probably been holding back for years, began to fall, silent and unstoppable. She made no effort to wipe them away, as if acknowledging them would somehow make her grief more real than she could handle. I was supposed to be at his funeral, she said, her voice breaking, but I was in the middle of hostile takeover negotiations that would have saved this company. I chose business over being there when they lowered his flag. I told myself he would have understood, that he would have wanted me to fight for what he built, but I've never forgiven myself for that choice. Daniel felt the familiar weight of survivor's guilt, the burden that had driven him from the military into the shadows of civilian life. But seeing Victoria's pain awakened something in him that had been dormant for too long, the instinct to serve, to protect, to carry others through their darkness. He would have understood, Daniel said firmly. Colonel Sterling taught me that. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones nobody sees, the choices we make when honor demands sacrifice. He would have been proud that you fought to preserve what he built, even if it meant missing the ceremony. Victoria looked up at him, her steel-grey eyes now bright with unshed tears and something that might have been hope. You really believe in that? I know it, Daniel replied. He used to say that the measure of a leader wasn't whether they won every battle, but whether they kept fighting for the right reasons, even when fighting meant standing alone. They sat in silence for several minutes, two warriors from different campaigns, processing the impossible connection that had brought them together. Outside the windows, Chicago's lights began to twinkle in the gathering dusk, the city transforming itself from the harsh reality of daylight into something softer and more forgiving. Finally, Victoria composed herself, wiping away the last of her tears with the back of her hand. When she spoke again, her voice had regained some of its strength, though the vulnerability remained. Mr. Martinez, she said, I'm making some changes to our staffing arrangements. Starting tomorrow, you'll be reporting to this floor during regular business hours. We need someone with your attention to detail, managing the executive-level operations. Fear flickered through Daniel's chest. Was this a promotion or a more sophisticated form of termination? Ma'am, I'm not sure I understand. The night shift doesn't suit someone with your capabilities, Victoria continued, her tone becoming more businesslike, but lacking its earlier coldness. You'll be working days now, coordinating maintenance and security for the executive floors. It's a supervisory position with a substantial pay increase. Daniel felt disoriented, as if the ground beneath his feet had shifted without warning. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure I'm qualified for— You led soldiers in combat, Victoria interrupted. Managing a facilities team should be well within your skill set. She paused, studying his face with renewed intensity. Unless you prefer hiding in the shadows to stepping back into the light. The challenge in her words was unmistakable, and Daniel recognized the leadership technique his old colonel had used when pushing soldiers beyond their comfort zones. Victoria Sterling might be a corporate executive rather than a military officer, but she had inherited more from her father than just his company. There's one condition, she added, picking up the book and extending it toward him. I want you to keep this. My father clearly intended it for someone who would understand its message. I think he would want it to stay with the soldier he chose to receive it. Daniel accepted the book with hands that had steadied now that he understood what was being asked of him. Thank you, Ma'am. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Victoria said, and for the first time since he had entered her office, she smiled. It was a small thing, barely more than a softening around her eyes, but it transformed her face completely. Report to Rebecca at 8 a.m. tomorrow. She'll brief you on your new responsibilities. As Daniel turned to leave, Victoria called after him. And Mr. Martinez, thank you for telling me about my father. It means more than you know. Walking toward the elevator, Daniel felt something stirring in his chest that he hadn't experienced in 3 years. Not quite hope, not yet, but the possibility of hope. The book felt warm in his hands, no longer a burden of grief, but a bridge between the man he had been and the man he might become again. The elevator doors closed behind him, but instead of descending into the familiar darkness of the night shift, Daniel found himself rising towards something he couldn't yet name, but was finally ready to face. The following weeks brought changes that rippled through Sterling Industries like stones thrown into still water. Daniel reported to the 20th floor each morning at 8 sharp, wearing the navy blue polo shirt and khakis that marked his new role as Executive Facilities Coordinator. The transformation from invisible night janitor to visible day supervisor felt like emerging from underwater, suddenly able to breathe but still uncertain about this new world above the surface. His office was small but strategically located near the elevator bank, allowing him to monitor the flow of people and resources across the executive floors. The space came furnished with a desk, filing cabinets and a computer that connected him to building systems he had never known existed. For the first time in 3 years, Daniel had a nameplate on his door and business cards with his title printed. In crisp black letters, the responsibilities were more complex than Victoria had initially described. Daniel found himself coordinating with security teams, scheduling maintenance for sensitive equipment, and managing a staff of 12 people who maintained the executive floors. But the real challenge wasn't logistical, it was psychological. After years of invisibility, being seen again felt like standing in a spotlight that revealed every flaw and uncertainty. His first week was a careful dance of observation and adaptation. Daniel studied the rhythms of the executive floor like he had once studied enemy movements, noting who arrived early, who stayed late, and how the invisible hierarchies shaped every interaction. The executives themselves remained largely aloof, acknowledging his presence with polite nods, but maintaining the careful distance that separated leadership from support staff. Victoria Sterling was a puzzle he couldn't solve. In public, she maintained her reputation as the Ice Queen, delivering orders with crisp efficiency and expecting immediate compliance. But occasionally, when they passed in the hallway or spoke about building operations, Daniel caught glimpses of the woman who had cried over her father's memory. Those moments felt like shared secrets, acknowledgments of a connection that neither of them knew how to navigate in the harsh light of corporate reality. The other executives watched these interactions with barely concealed curiosity, Marcus Chen, the chief technology officer, was a slight man with wire-rimmed glasses who spoke in rapid bursts about cybersecurity protocols and data encryption. Sarah Rodriguez, head of operations, carried herself with military bearing that Daniel recognized from his army days, though she never acknowledged their shared background. James Morrison, the chief financial officer, was older and more traditional, viewing Daniel's rapid promotion with obvious skepticism. But the real resistance came from middle management, the layer of supervisors and department heads who felt threatened by an outsider's sudden elevation. They whispered about favoritism and questioned what special qualifications a former janitor could possibly possess. Daniel heard the rumors secondhand through his staff, that he was Sterling's secret lover, that he had dirt on the company, that his military background hid a darker story about why he had left the service. Rebecca Martinez, Victoria's assistant, became an unexpected ally. During their daily briefings about building operations, she shared insights about office politics with the detached professionalism of a war correspondent. She explained which executives could be trusted, which ones held grudges, and how to navigate the treacherous waters of corporate favor. Miss Sterling values competence above all else, Rebecca told him one morning as they reviewed security protocols. She doesn't care about your background or how you got here, but she will notice if you fail to meet her standards, and she doesn't give second chances. Daniel's military training served him well in this new environment. He approached each task with methodical precision, documenting procedures, identifying potential problems before they became crises, and building relationships with the security guards and maintenance staff who kept the building functioning. His team began to respect his leadership style, which emphasized clear communication and shared responsibility rather than authoritarian control. The most significant change came during his third week, when a water leak in the server room threatened to damage millions of dollars worth of computing equipment. Daniel responded with the crisis management skills he had learned in Afghanistan, coordinating multiple teams while maintaining communication with executives whose entire business depended on the technology housed in that room. He arrived at the office at 5 a.m. to find water seeping under the server room door, the result of a burst pipe in the floor above. Without hesitation, Daniel called in emergency maintenance crews, coordinated with the building's engineering staff, and set up temporary power systems to keep critical servers running while repairs were made. He worked for 16 straight hours, directing operations while personally moving equipment to safety. Victoria arrived during the height of the crisis, summoned by Rebecca's urgent call. She found Daniel knee-deep in technical discussions with IT staff, his clothes soaked from crawling through ceiling spaces to identify the source of the leak. For a moment, she just watched him work, noting how naturally he had assumed command of a complex operation involving dozens of people and millions of dollars in equipment. "Status report," she said, when Daniel noticed her presence. "Primary servers are secure and running on backup power," he replied without missing a beat. "We've isolated the leak, and repairs should be complete within 4 hours. No data loss, minimal downtime. The cleaning crews are standing by to sanitize the area once the water issue is resolved." Victoria nodded approvingly. "Cost estimate for damages? Under 50,000, mostly for carpet replacement and some electrical work. Could have been 10 times that if we hadn't caught it early." "Good work," she said simply, but Daniel caught something in her tone that reminded him of Colonel Sterling's rare moments of praise. Recognition from a leader who understood the weight of responsibility. The server room incident became a turning point in Daniel's integration into the corporate hierarchy. Executives who had previously ignored him began seeking his input on facilities-related decisions. His staff started referring to him as the Colonel, a nickname that spread through the building's support personnel. For the first time since leaving the military, Daniel felt the satisfaction that came from successfully completing a mission. But the changes weren't limited to his professional life. Daniel found himself reading again, not just the warrior ethos, but business books about leadership and organizational behavior. He enrolled in night classes at a community college, working toward a degree in business administration that he had never imagined needing. His apartment gradually acquired furniture that wasn't military surplus, and he started cooking meals instead of surviving on takeout and frozen dinners. The transformation wasn't without its challenges. Daniel still struggled with crowds and sudden noises, still took medication to manage his PTSD symptoms, but having a sense of purpose again, feeling needed and valued, provided a foundation for healing that no therapy session had been able to create. He was rediscovering who he could be in a world that valued his skills without requiring him to carry a weapon. Victoria began stopping by his office occasionally, ostensibly to discuss building operations, but often lingering to talk about her father's military philosophy and its application to corporate leadership. These conversations felt like continuing education in a subject they both understood intuitively, but had learned in very different classrooms. My father used to say that leadership was about creating conditions where other people could succeed, Victoria mentioned one afternoon as they reviewed quarterly maintenance reports. I've been thinking about that lately, wondering if I've been too focused on commanding rather than enabling. Daniel looked up from his computer screen, recognizing the reflective tone that meant she was thinking aloud rather than seeking specific advice. The colonel believed that good leaders made themselves indispensable by making everyone around them better. He said the best compliment you could receive was hearing that your people could function without you. But how do you maintain standards without micromanaging? How do you delegate responsibility without losing control? These were questions Daniel had wrestled with as a squad leader, balancing the need to keep his soldiers alive with the necessity of developing their judgment and initiative. You start by hiring the right people, then you give them clear objectives and the resources they need to succeed. After that, you stay available for guidance but resist the urge to solve every problem yourself. Victoria smiled slightly, the expression transforming her face from corporate mask to something more human. Easier said than done. This company has grown so fast that I've been making every decision personally, but that's not sustainable, and it's not preparing anyone else to lead. Their conversation was interrupted by Rebecca's voice over the intercom, announcing that Daniel's evening meeting with the security team was ready to begin. As he gathered his papers, Victoria made a decision that would reshape both of their futures in ways neither could anticipate. "Daniel," she said as he reached the door, "I want you to attend the quarterly board meeting next week, not as facilities coordinator, but as my advisor on operational efficiency. I think it's time our board members met someone who understands what actually makes this company function." The invitation felt like another promotion, another step away from the shadows and into a world where his voice mattered. But it also felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, uncertain whether the next step would be onto solid ground or into empty air. "Are you sure that's wise?" Daniel asked. "I'm not exactly boardroom material." Victoria's smile widened slightly, revealing a hint of the mischief her father had probably recognized in his teenage daughter. "My father once told me that the most dangerous person in any organization was someone with nothing to lose and everything to prove. I think it's time." Our board met a dangerous person. As Daniel left her office, he carried with him the weight of new expectations and the growing realization that his journey from invisible janitor to visible leader was far from complete. The book in his jacket pocket felt heavier now, not with grief, but with possibility. Colonel Sterling's words about leading from the front had taken on new meaning in this corporate battlefield. where the enemies were inefficiency and complacency rather than insurgents and IEDs. That evening, as Daniel reviewed building security protocols and prepared for his expanded responsibilities, he found himself thinking about the mysterious path that had brought him to this moment. 3 years ago, he had believed his leadership days were over, that PTSD and civilian life had permanently stripped away his ability to guide others through difficult terrain. But perhaps Victoria was right. Perhaps the most important battles were the ones nobody saw, fought in conference rooms and quiet offices by people who understood that true strength came from lifting others up rather than holding them down. The warrior's code his colonel had taught him wasn't limited to military service. It could be applied anywhere that courage and honor were needed to overcome fear and selfishness. The quarterly board meeting was still a week away, but Daniel could already feel the weight of that responsibility settling onto his shoulders like a familiar uniform. He was ready to lead from the front again, even if the front line now consisted of financial reports and corporate strategy rather than mountain passes and enemy fire. The quarterly board meeting convened on a crisp Thursday morning in Sterling Industries' most imposing conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of Chicago's financial district, while a massive mahogany table dominated the space like an altar to corporate power. Daniel arrived 30 minutes early, wearing his first business suit in over 3 years, the navy fabric feeling foreign after months of polo shirts and khakis. He had spent the previous week preparing with an intensity that reminded him of mission briefings in Afghanistan. Victoria had provided him with financial reports, operational data, and background information on each board member. But no amount of preparation could fully ready him for stepping into a world where battles were fought with spreadsheets and quarterly projections rather than rifles and tactical maneuvers. The board members began arriving at 9 o'clock sharp, each one a study in expensive suits and calculated confidence. Harold Westbrook, the chairman, was a silver-haired man in his 70s who had built his fortune in oil and gas before diversifying into defense contracting. Margaret Chen, Marcus's aunt and a venture capitalist, moved with the efficient grace of someone accustomed to evaluating investments in minutes. Robert Davidson, a former Pentagon official, carried himself with military bearing that Daniel recognized, but kept his expression neutral when they were introduced. Victoria entered last, her presence immediately commanding attention despite being the youngest person in the room. She had chosen a charcoal grey suit that projected authority without aggression, and her steel-grey eyes swept the room with the precision of a general surveying a battlefield. When she took her seat at the head of the table, Daniel felt the dynamics shift subtly, everyone unconsciously deferring to her position despite their individual wealth and influence. "Before we begin with the standard quarterly review," Victoria announced, "I want to introduce Daniel Martinez, our Executive Facilities Coordinator. Daniel will be presenting some observations about operational efficiency that I believe will be valuable for our strategic planning." The reaction was immediate and predictable. Eyebrows raised around the table, glances exchanged between board members who were clearly wondering why a facilities manager was participating in their exclusive gathering. Harold Westbrook leaned back in his chair, his expression suggesting he was prepared to be politely tolerant of whatever amateur presentation was about to waste their time. "Ms. Sterling," Robert Davidson interjected, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard, "while I'm sure Mr. Martinez is excellent at his job, operational details are typically handled at the management level rather than the board level." Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. "Mr. Davidson, with respect, I think you'll find that Daniel's perspective offers insights that traditional management reports often miss. Daniel, would you please share your analysis of our current operational structure?" Daniel stood, feeling the weight of 13 pairs of eyes evaluating his every movement. The familiar tightness in his chest that preceded combat operations settled in, but he channeled the nervous energy into focus. These weren't insurgents hiding in mountain caves. They were business people who responded to data and logic rather than intimidation and force. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady despite the circumstances, "over the past month I've conducted a comprehensive assessment of our operational efficiency across all facilities. What I've discovered is that we're hemorrhaging approximately $2.3 million annually through preventable inefficiencies, security vulnerabilities, and resource misallocation." The room went completely silent. Margaret Chen set down her coffee, up with deliberate care, while Harold Westbrook's expression shifted from polite tolerance to sharp attention. Daniel had learned in the military that nothing captured an audience's focus quite like specific numbers attached to significant problems. "The largest issue is redundancy in our security protocols," Daniel continued, moving to the presentation screen Victoria had arranged. "We currently employ 3 separate firms for different aspects of building security, with overlapping responsibilities and conflicting communication protocols. This creates coverage gaps during shift changes and costs us an additional $400,000 annually compared to integrated security management." He clicked to the next slide, displaying a detailed breakdown of maintenance costs across their 3 office buildings. "Our preventive maintenance scheduling is reactive rather than proactive, resulting in emergency repairs that cost 3 times more than planned interventions. The server room incident last month exemplifies this problem. A $15 gasket failure nearly caused $500,000 in equipment damage because routine inspections weren't properly scheduled." Robert Davidson leaned forward, his military background clearly engaged by the systematic analysis. "What's your recommendation for the security consolidation?" "Single-source contracting with a firm that specializes in corporate intelligence and physical security," Daniel replied without hesitation. "I've identified 2 companies with the capabilities we need, both with strong reputations in government and defense contracting. The transition would pay for itself within 18 months, through reduced costs and improved efficiency." Margaret Chen studied the financial projections Daniel had prepared. "These numbers assume perfect implementation with no transition costs or temporary productivity losses. What's your confidence level in achieving these savings?" Daniel appreciated the directness of her question. Venture capitalists understood risk assessment in ways that reminded him of military planning. 85% confidence on the security consolidation, 90% on the maintenance optimization. The remaining recommendations have variable success rates, but even partial implementation would save over $1 million annually. Harold Westbrook had been silent throughout the presentation, but his silence felt different now, engaged rather than dismissive. "Mr. Martinez, your background is military, correct? How does facilities management relate to your previous experience?" The question contained layers of meaning that Daniel recognized. Westbrook wasn't just asking about qualifications. He was probing whether a former soldier could understand the nuances of corporate operations. It was a test disguised as curiosity. "Logistics, sir," Daniel replied simply. "In Afghanistan, keeping a forward operating base functional meant coordinating security, maintenance, supply chains, and personnel management under constantly changing conditions. The specific challenges are different in corporate settings, but the fundamental principles are identical. Anticipate problems, optimize resources, and maintain clear communication channels." "And the human element," Margaret Chen pressed. "Corporate environments involve stakeholder management and relationship building, not just operational efficiency." Daniel had anticipated this line of questioning and prepared carefully for it. The most important lesson I learned in the military was that every system ultimately depends on people. You can have perfect procedures and unlimited resources, but if your personnel don't understand their role in the larger mission, everything falls apart. That's why my recommendations include training programs and clear accountability structures, not just policy changes. Victoria had remained silent during the exchange, allowing Daniel to stand on his own merits rather than defending him. But now she spoke, her voice carrying the authority that had built Sterling Industries into a billion-dollar enterprise. The reason I invited Daniel to present today is that he represents something this company has been missing: perspective from someone who understands both operational realities and strategic thinking. We've grown so focused on quarterly numbers and market share that we've lost sight of the foundation that makes everything else possible. She stood and moved to the windows, her silhouette sharp against the Chicago skyline. My father built this company on the principle that excellence in small things creates excellence in large things. We've forgotten that lesson, delegating operational details to people who see them as routine rather than critical. Harold Westbrook exchanged glances with other board members, the kind of silent communication that Daniel recognized from military command structures. Ms. Sterling, are you proposing that we elevate facilities management to a board-level concern? I'm proposing that we stop treating operational efficiency as beneath our attention, Victoria replied. Daniel's analysis represents 1 month of focused observation by someone who understands systems thinking. Imagine what we could accomplish with that level of attention applied to every aspect of our operations. Robert Davidson had been studying Daniel throughout the exchange, and now he spoke with the deliberate cadence of someone making a calculated decision. Mr. Martinez, hypothetically, if you were given broader authority to implement these recommendations, what would be your first priority? The question felt like another test, but Daniel sensed opportunity rather than trap. Personnel development, sir. The most sophisticated procedures are useless if people don't have the training and motivation to execute them properly. I'd start with cross-training key personnel, establishing clear performance metrics, and creating advancement pathways that reward excellence rather than just seniority. That sounds like a significant expansion of your current role, Margaret Chen observed. Are you prepared for that level of responsibility? Daniel felt the weight of the moment, understanding that his answer would determine not just his own future, but potentially the direction of the entire company. In Afghanistan, he had learned that the most important decisions often came disguised as routine conversations, moments when clarity of purpose mattered more than perfect knowledge. Ma'am, I've spent 3 years learning this company from the ground up. I know which systems work, which ones don't, and why. I understand the culture and the people who make everything happen. If Ms. Sterling and the board believe I can contribute at a strategic level, then yes, I'm prepared for that responsibility. Harold Westbrook had been taking notes throughout the discussion, and now he set down his pen with the finality of someone reaching a conclusion. Ms. Sterling, I think we need to discuss this proposal in more detail. Mr. Martinez, would you excuse us for executive session? Daniel gathered his materials and headed for the door, but Victoria's voice stopped him. Daniel, wait in my office. We'll have a decision within the hour. As he left the conference room, Daniel felt the familiar mixture of exhaustion and anticipation that followed high-stakes operations. He had presented his case as clearly as possible, but the outcome was now beyond his control. In his jacket pocket, Colonel Sterling's book felt like a talisman, a reminder that leadership required the courage to act on principle even when the consequences were uncertain. Victoria's office felt like a sanctuary after the intensity of the boardroom. Daniel settled into one of the leather chairs facing her desk and tried to process what had just occurred. 6 months ago, he had been invisible, a night janitor whose biggest responsibility was emptying trash bins. Now he was potentially being considered for a position that would make him one of the most influential people in a billion-dollar corporation. The transformation felt surreal, like watching someone else's life unfold rather than living his own. But underneath the disorientation was something stronger, the recognition that he was finally using skills he had thought were lost forever. The ability to analyze complex situations, coordinate multiple moving parts, and lead people through uncertainty. These capabilities weren't limited to military service. They were transferable to any environment that required clear thinking and decisive action. 43 minutes later, Victoria returned to her office with an expression Daniel couldn't read. She closed the door behind her and took her seat across from him, her steel-grey eyes holding the same intensity he had seen during their first conversation about her father. The board has approved the creation of a new position, Chief Operating Officer, reporting directly to me with responsibility for all non-financial operations. The position comes with a substantial salary increase, equity participation, and a seat on the executive committee. She paused, studying his reaction. They want to offer it to you. Daniel felt the words wash over him like incoming artillery, too significant to fully process in the moment. "Co-o," he repeated quietly. "That's quite a leap from facilities coordinator." "It's exactly the leap this company needs," Victoria replied firmly. "Daniel, you've spent the last month proving that operational excellence isn't just about maintaining equipment and managing vendors. It's about creating systems that enable everyone else to succeed. That's what a chief operating officer should do, and it's what my father would have expected from someone carrying his book." The reference to Colonel Sterling felt like a benediction, a connection between past and future that transformed Daniel's uncertainty into something approaching clarity. He thought about the inscription in the book, about leading from the front and acting with courage despite fear. This was his moment to step forward or retreat back into the comfortable shadows. "I accept," he said simply. Victoria's smile was the brightest he had ever seen from her, transforming her face completely. "Good, because we have a lot of work ahead of us." The announcement of Daniel Martinez's promotion to Chief Operating Officer sent shockwaves through Sterling Industries that reverberated far beyond the corporate headquarters. Within hours of the official memo, news outlets across Chicago picked up the story of a former janitor's meteoric rise to the C-suite, painting it as either an inspiring tale of American opportunity or a troubling example of nepotism and poor corporate governance. The Chicago Tribune's business section ran a front-page story titled "From Night Shift to C-Suite, Veterans' Unlikely Corporate Ascent," while the Wall Street Journal published a more skeptical analysis questioning whether Sterling Industries' board had abandoned sound business judgment in favor of feel-good publicity. Financial blogs dissected the decision endlessly, with commentators split between admiration for Victoria Sterling's unconventional leadership and concern about the precedent of promoting facilities staff to executive positions. Inside the company, reactions were equally divided and far more personal. The executive floor buzzed with whispered conversations as employees tried to process the dramatic shift in their corporate hierarchy. Some saw Daniel's promotion as evidence that Sterling Industries truly valued merit over credentials, while others worried that traditional career paths and qualifications had suddenly become meaningless. Marcus Chen, the Chief Technology Officer, was among the first to publicly support the decision. During a department meeting with his software development team, he addressed the rumors and speculation directly. "I've worked with Daniel on several critical infrastructure projects over the past month," he told his staff. "His approach to problem-solving and system optimization is exactly what this company needs at the operational level. Sometimes the best leaders come from unexpected places. Sarah Rodriguez, head of operations, had a more complex response to the news. As someone with military background herself, she understood the leadership capabilities that combat experience could develop. But she also felt conflicted about being passed over for a role that seemed closely aligned with her own operational responsibilities. During a private conversation with Victoria, she expressed her concerns with characteristic directness. "I respect Daniel's military service and his work ethic," Sarah said, choosing her words carefully. "But this promotion creates questions about advancement criteria that I think we need to address. What does this say to other employees who have been following traditional corporate development paths?" Victoria appreciated Sarah's honesty and had anticipated these concerns. "Sarah, Daniel wasn't promoted because of his military service or his personal connection to my father. He was promoted because he demonstrated operational thinking that this company desperately needs. His analysis identified millions in potential savings that our existing management structure had missed." "But the perception will change when people see results," Victoria interrupted gently. "Daniel's first 90 days will be crucial in establishing his credibility. I'm confident he'll exceed expectations, but I understand your concerns about how this affects everyone else's career development." The most vocal opposition came from James Morrison, the chief financial officer, who saw Daniel's promotion as a dangerous departure from sound business practices. Morrison had built his career on careful analysis and incremental progress, viewing sudden changes as inherently risky. He requested a private meeting with Victoria to express his objections. "Victoria, I've been with this company for 12 years, Morrison said, his tone respectful but firm. "I've seen what happens when organizations make emotional decisions, rather than strategic ones. Promoting someone from facilities to the C-suite without traditional management experience sets a precedent that could undermine our entire corporate structure." Victoria had expected this conversation and prepared for it carefully. Morrison's concerns weren't entirely unfounded, and his financial expertise was too valuable to dismiss casually. "James, I understand your position, and I value your loyalty to this company. But I need you to evaluate Daniel based on his performance rather than his background. Give him 6 months to prove himself, and if he doesn't deliver measurable results, we'll revisit the decision." Morrison remained skeptical, but agreed to reserve final judgment, though his subsequent interactions with Daniel carried a formality that bordered on hostility. Other middle managers followed Morrison's lead, creating an undercurrent of resistance that Daniel would need to navigate carefully. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The broader employee response was mixed, but generally more positive than executive leadership had anticipated. The facilities and security staff who had worked directly with Daniel were enthusiastic supporters of his promotion. They had seen his leadership capabilities firsthand and felt pride in seeing one of their own elevated to the highest levels of corporate hierarchy. Maria Santos, who supervised the cleaning staff, expressed sentiments shared by many support employees. "Daniel always treated us with respect, even when he was working nights like the rest of us. He remembers what it's like to be invisible in this company, and that makes him different from other executives who've never done the work themselves." The professional staff, accountants, project managers, marketing specialists, were more cautious in their responses. Many had advanced degrees and carefully planned career trajectories that made Daniel's sudden elevation seem to violate unspoken rules about corporate advancement. Some worried that their own qualifications and experience might suddenly count for less in an organization that valued unconventional backgrounds. But Daniel's first week as COO began to shift perceptions through a series of decisions that demonstrated both strategic thinking and operational competence. His first initiative was the security consolidation he had presented to the board, but he implemented it with a level of detail and stakeholder communication that impressed even his critics. Rather than simply announcing the change and expecting compliance, Daniel spent 3 days meeting with representatives from all affected departments. He explained the rationale behind the consolidation, addressed specific concerns about transition procedures, and established clear timelines with built-in feedback mechanisms. The process resembled military operational planning more than typical corporate change management, with contingencies prepared for various scenarios and clear chains of communication established. During a staff meeting with department heads, Daniel outlined his operating philosophy in terms that reflected both his military background and his growing understanding of corporate dynamics. "My job isn't to micromanage your departments or duplicate work you're already doing well," he told the assembled managers. "My job is to identify systemic inefficiencies and create conditions where everyone can perform at their highest level." Robert, Jen, Marcus's cousin who managed the accounting department, raised a hand. "That sounds good in principle, but how do you plan to maintain oversight without stepping on departmental autonomy?" Daniel appreciated the directness of the question. "Through metrics and regular communication rather than daily interference. Each department will establish key performance indicators that align with overall company objectives. We'll have monthly reviews to identify problems early and quarterly assessments to adjust strategies based on results." This systematic approach resonated with employees who had grown accustomed to inconsistent communication and unclear expectations from previous operational management. Daniel's military background showed in his emphasis on clear objectives, defined responsibilities, and regular feedback, principles that translated well to corporate environments despite their different context. The security consolidation proceeded smoothly, completed 2 weeks ahead of schedule and under budget. The new security firm, Patriot Protection Services, brought integrated surveillance systems and communication protocols that immediately improved response times and coverage consistency. More importantly, the transition demonstrated Daniel's ability to manage complex projects involving multiple stakeholders and competing priorities. Victoria watched these developments with growing confidence in her decision. During their weekly one-on-one meetings, she saw Daniel's natural leadership abilities adapting to corporate requirements while maintaining the strategic thinking that had made him an effective squad leader. His questions were penetrating, his analysis thorough, and his recommendations consistently practical. "The board meeting went better than I expected," Victoria told him during one of their Thursday afternoon sessions. "Harold Westbrook called me personally to say he was impressed with your presentation. That's significant praise from someone who's notoriously difficult to impress." Daniel had been reviewing quarterly operational reports, but he looked up at Victoria's comment. "I appreciate their confidence, but the real test will be delivering the results I promised. Talk is easy. Execution is what matters." "Speaking of execution," Victoria said, "I want to discuss expanding your responsibilities. The board has approved your recommendation for integrated maintenance management, and they're interested in applying similar systematic analysis to our project management processes." This represented another significant expansion of Daniel's role, moving beyond facilities and operations into areas that directly affected client services and revenue generation. "That's moving into Sarah Rodriguez's territory," Daniel observed. "I want to make sure we're coordinating rather than competing." Victoria appreciated his sensitivity to internal politics. "Sarah will be involved in every aspect of the project management review. In fact, I want you two to work together on developing new procedures that combine operational efficiency with service quality. Consider it a test of whether this expanded operational model can work across different functional areas." The collaboration with Sarah began cautiously, with both executives aware that their working relationship would be scrutinized by employees looking for signs of conflict or favoritism. But Sarah's military background provided common ground, and her expertise in current operational procedures complemented Daniel's systematic approach to process improvement. Their first joint presentation to the executive committee focused on client service delivery, identifying bottlenecks in project approval processes and communication gaps between departments. The analysis revealed that Sterling Industries was losing potential revenue through delayed project initiation and inefficient resource allocation, problems that could be solved through better coordination rather than additional hiring. Our current project management structure treats each client engagement as an isolated event, Sarah explained to the assembled executives. This creates redundant preparation work and prevents us from leveraging expertise gained from similar projects. Daniel continued the presentation, outlining proposed changes that would standardize certain procedures while maintaining flexibility for unique client requirements. The goal isn't to create rigid bureaucracy, but to establish efficient baselines that free up time and resources for customization where it adds real value. The executive committee's response was overwhelmingly positive, with even James Morrison acknowledging that the proposed changes could significantly improve profitability. More importantly, the successful collaboration between Daniel and Sarah demonstrated that the expanded operational model could work without creating destructive internal competition. By the end of his second month as COO, Daniel had implemented 4 major operational improvements that were already generating measurable cost savings and efficiency gains. The security consolidation was saving the company approximately $40,000 per month, while the maintenance optimization had prevented 2 potential equipment failures that could have cost hundreds of thousands in emergency repairs and lost productivity. But the most significant change was cultural rather than operational. Daniel's promotion from janitor to C-suite executive had sparked conversations throughout the company about merit, opportunity, and the value of different types of experience. Employees who had previously felt invisible began to see possibilities for advancement that transcended traditional career paths. The quarterly employee satisfaction survey, conducted by an independent firm, showed marked improvements in several key areas. Job satisfaction had increased by 15%, with particularly strong gains among support staff and mid-level employees. Comments frequently mentioned feeling more valued and seeing clearer paths for advancement as reasons for improved morale. Victoria shared these results with the board during their next quarterly meeting, using them to demonstrate that Daniel's promotion had created positive ripple effects throughout the organization. Sometimes the most strategic decisions are the ones that send clear messages about company values, she told the assembled board members. Promoting Daniel wasn't just about operational efficiency. It was about demonstrating that we value excellence, regardless of where it comes from. Harold Westbrook, who had initially been skeptical of the promotion, now spoke as one of Daniel's strongest supporters. "Miss Sterling, I'll admit I had concerns about this decision initially, but the results speak for themselves. Mr. Martinez has delivered everything he promised and more. This company is more efficient, more profitable, and apparently more inspiring than it was 6 months ago." As Daniel sat in his office late that Thursday evening, reviewing plans for the next quarter's operational initiatives, he reflected on the improbable journey that had brought him to this moment. The worn copy of The Warrior Ethos sat on his desk beside quarterly reports and strategic planning documents, a reminder of where he had come from and the principles that continued to guide his leadership style. The book's inscription seemed more prophetic now than it had when Colonel Sterling first wrote those words, "Lead from the front, always." Daniel was learning that leading from the front in corporate environments meant accepting responsibility for outcomes, taking risks on behalf of others, and maintaining clarity of purpose even when the path forward was uncertain. 6 months earlier, he had believed his leadership days were over, that PTSD and civilian life had permanently stripped away his ability to guide others through difficult challenges. But Victoria Sterling's faith in his potential had created opportunities to rediscover strengths he thought were lost forever. More importantly, it had shown him that the warrior's code he had learned in Afghanistan could be adapted to different battlefields without losing its essential meaning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove that excellence could emerge from unexpected places. But tonight, Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced since leaving the military, the deep satisfaction that came from serving a mission larger than himself while helping others discover their own capacity for growth and achievement. The transformation of Sterling Industries accelerated through the winter months, driven by Daniel's systematic approach to operational excellence and Victoria's strategic vision for sustainable growth. By February, the company had not only recovered the projected cost savings from Daniel's initial recommendations, but had exceeded them by 30%, generating an additional $800,000 in quarterly profits through improved efficiency and reduced waste. The success attracted attention from industry publications and business schools, with Harvard Business Review requesting permission to document Sterling Industries' unconventional approach to executive development. The article, titled "Military Leadership in Corporate Environments, a Case Study in Strategic Promotion," would eventually become required reading in several MBA programs, though Daniel found the academic analysis of his promotion both flattering and somewhat surreal. More immediately significant was the interest from other defense contractors and Fortune 500 companies seeking to understand Sterling's operational improvements. Daniel found himself fielding inquiries from executives who wanted to implement similar systematic approaches to efficiency optimization, though he was careful to emphasize that successful implementation required cultural commitment rather than just procedural changes. The internal transformation was equally dramatic but more complex to navigate. Daniel's success had created a new template for advancement within Sterling Industries, encouraging employees to think beyond traditional career trajectories and focus on demonstrating value through innovative problem-solving. The company established a formal mentorship program that paired senior executives with promising employees from all departments, regardless of their educational backgrounds or previous experience. Maria Santos, who had supervised the cleaning staff when Daniel worked nights, became one of the program's most successful participants. Her deep understanding of building operations and natural leadership abilities caught Daniel's attention during a facilities review meeting, leading to her enrollment in management training courses and eventual promotion to assistant director of facilities management. When Daniel got promoted, it showed all of us that hard work and good ideas matter more than where you went to college, Maria explained during an interview with the Chicago Tribune. He remembered what it was like to be overlooked, and now he's making sure other people get opportunities to show what they can do. But not all changes were smooth or universally welcomed. The rapid pace of operational improvements created stress for some employees who struggled to adapt to new procedures and higher performance expectations. James Morrison, the chief financial officer, remained skeptical of what he privately called the militarization of corporate culture, though he couldn't argue with the financial results Daniel's initiatives continued to generate. The tension came to a head during a particularly contentious executive committee meeting in March, when Morrison challenged Daniel's proposal for reorganizing the accounting department's workflow processes. "Daniel, I appreciate your enthusiasm for optimization," Morrison said, his tone carefully controlled. But accounting requires precision and adherence to established protocols. Military-style efficiency can't override regulatory compliance and fiduciary responsibility. Daniel had anticipated this objection and prepared his response carefully. James, I'm not suggesting we compromise compliance or accuracy. I'm proposing we eliminate redundant verification steps that add time without improving quality. The reorganization would actually enhance our audit trail by creating clearer documentation of decision-making processes. That's theoretical, Morrison replied. In practice, reducing oversight creates opportunities for errors that could have serious legal and financial consequences. Victoria had been observing the exchange with growing frustration, recognizing that Morrison's resistance went deeper than procedural concerns. James, Daniel's track record over the past 6 months suggests that his recommendations are based on thorough analysis rather than theoretical speculation. What specific risks do you see that we haven't addressed? Morrison hesitated, clearly aware that his objections were more philosophical than substantive. My concern is that we're moving too fast, changing too many things without adequate testing. Successful companies grow through careful evolution, not dramatic transformation. Daniel understood the deeper issue behind Morrison's resistance and chose to address it directly. James, you're worried that rapid change could destabilize systems that have worked well for years. That's a legitimate concern, and it's why every recommendation I've made includes detailed implementation timelines and rollback procedures if problems develop. Furthermore, Daniel continued, the goal isn't to change everything just for the sake of change. It's to identify specific inefficiencies that prevent this company from reaching its full potential. If the accounting department is already optimized, then my analysis will confirm that and will focus elsewhere. Morrison's expression softened slightly, recognizing that Daniel was offering collaboration rather than confrontation. I suppose a preliminary analysis wouldn't hurt, as long as we agree that any changes require extensive testing before full implementation. Absolutely, Daniel agreed. In fact, I'd prefer that you lead the analysis yourself, with my team providing support and outside perspective. You understand the compliance requirements better than anyone, so your involvement would ensure we don't overlook critical considerations. The exchange marked a turning point in Daniel's relationship with the more traditional elements of Sterling's executive team. By demonstrating respect for existing expertise, while maintaining his commitment to continuous improvement, he began to build bridges across the cultural divide his promotion had created. Victoria watched these dynamics with growing appreciation for Daniel's political instincts. During their weekly one-on-one meeting, she complimented his handling of Morrison's concerns. You could have pulled rank and forced the issue, she observed, but instead you found a way to make him a partner in the solution. That's sophisticated leadership. Daniel appreciated the feedback, but remained focused on practical results rather than interpersonal victories. Morrison's concerns aren't wrong, just conservative. If we can show him that systematic analysis actually enhances financial controls rather than undermining them, he'll become one of our strongest supporters. And if the analysis reveals that accounting operations are already optimized, then we'll have confirmed the value of what's already working and can focus our attention on areas with greater improvement potential. Either way, the company benefits from better understanding its own processes. This pragmatic approach to organizational change was beginning to attract attention from business schools and consulting firms interested in documenting Sterling's transformation. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a professor at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management, contacted Victoria about conducting a longitudinal study of the company's evolution under Daniel's operational leadership. What makes Sterling Industries particularly interesting? Dr. Warren explained during their initial meeting, is that you've achieved significant operational improvements without bringing in external consultants or implementing standard change management programs. The promotion of someone from facilities to the C-suite represents a unique, natural experiment in organizational development. Victoria agreed to participate in the study, recognizing that external academic validation would help establish Sterling as a thought leader in innovative management practices. But she insisted that any research must not interfere with ongoing operations or compromise sensitive business information. The spring quarter brought new challenges as Sterling Industries began to attract attention from competitors and potential acquisition targets. The company's improved efficiency and profitability had not gone unnoticed by larger defense contractors looking to expand their capabilities through strategic acquisitions. Daniel first became aware of the external interest when Rebecca Martinez mentioned that several unknown individuals had been asking detailed questions about Sterling's operations during what appeared to be routine vendor meetings. The pattern suggested organized intelligence gathering rather than casual curiosity, prompting Daniel to initiate a comprehensive security review. "We may have a corporate espionage problem," Daniel told Victoria during their Thursday afternoon meeting. "The questions being asked are too specific and too focused on our operational improvements to be coincidental." Victoria had been expecting this development, knowing that their success would inevitably attract competitive attention. "What do you recommend?" "Enhanced information security protocols, compartmentalized access to sensitive operational data, and background verification for anyone requesting detailed facility tours or operational briefings. We should also consider engaging a corporate intelligence firm to identify who's behind the inquiry pattern." "Approved," Victoria said without hesitation. "This company's competitive advantage depends on maintaining operational secrets that others can't easily replicate. Do whatever you need to do to protect our intellectual property." The security review revealed that several employees had been approached by recruiters offering unusually generous compensation packages for positions with competing firms. The recruitment efforts appeared coordinated and targeted specifically at personnel with detailed knowledge of Sterling's operational improvements. Daniel's military intelligence background proved invaluable in developing countermeasures. He implemented compartmentalized information access that limited each employee's knowledge to their specific functional area, established secure communication protocols for sensitive discussions, and created a counterintelligence program that monitored external inquiries about company operations. The measures were effective but created new tensions within the organization. Some employees felt that the increased security represented a lack of trust in their loyalty, while others worried that the company's newfound success had made them targets for corporate espionage. Sarah Rodriguez raised these concerns during an executive committee meeting. "Daniel, I understand the need for enhanced security, but we're starting to feel like we're working in a military compound rather than a corporate office. The compartmentalization is interfering with cross-departmental collaboration." Daniel had anticipated this feedback and prepared a balanced response. "Sarah, you're right that security measures can impede collaboration if they're too restrictive. Let's modify the protocols to maintain security while preserving the communication flows that make our operations effective." The revised security procedures struck a better balance between protection and productivity, allowing for secure collaboration while maintaining vigilance against external intelligence gathering. More importantly, the process of addressing employee concerns demonstrated that Daniel's leadership style could adapt to feedback without compromising essential objectives. By April, Sterling Industries had attracted serious acquisition interest. From Blackwater Solutions, a major defense contractor looking to expand into cybersecurity and intelligence services. The preliminary offer valued sterling at $1.8 billion, representing a substantial premium over the company's estimated market value just 1 year earlier. Victoria convened a special board meeting to discuss the offer, though she had already decided that sterling's independence was more valuable than any acquisition premium. During the meeting, she outlined her reasoning for rejecting the offer while seeking board support for her decision. Blackwater's offer is financially attractive, Victoria acknowledged, but it would eliminate everything we've built over the past year. Our operational innovations and corporate culture represent competitive advantages that would be lost in a larger organization with established procedures and hierarchies. Harold Westbrook had been considering the implications of the offer since receiving Victoria's preliminary briefing. Victoria, the financial return for shareholders would be substantial. Are we certain that maintaining independence serves their best interests? Harold, our shareholders invested in Sterling Industries' potential for growth and innovation. Selling to Blackwater would provide immediate returns, but eliminate future appreciation potential. I believe we can generate greater long-term value by continuing our current trajectory. Daniel had been invited to present his perspective on the operational implications of potential acquisition. From an operational standpoint, he told the board, integration with Blackwater would require abandoning most of the efficiency improvements we've implemented. Their corporate structure couldn't accommodate our streamlined decision-making processes or flexible management approaches. Margaret Chen raised the strategic question that everyone was considering. But what about the resources that Blackwater could provide? Access to larger contracts, enhanced technology capabilities, expanded market reach. Those are valid considerations, Daniel replied, but they assume that bigger is always better. Our current size allows for operational agility and innovation that larger organizations struggle to maintain. We can compete effectively by being more efficient and responsive rather than simply larger. The board ultimately supported Victoria's recommendation to reject the acquisition offer, though several members expressed interest in revisiting the question if future offers reached significantly higher valuations. The decision reinforced Sterling's commitment to independent growth while validating the operational transformation that had made the company an attractive acquisition target. The rejection of Blackwater's offer sent clear signals to the market about Sterling Industries' confidence in its strategic direction. Stock prices increased by 12% in the week following the announcement, and business publications began featuring Victoria and Daniel as examples of innovative leadership in traditional industries. Fortune magazine scheduled a cover story about Sterling's transformation, focusing on the unusual partnership between Victoria's strategic vision and Daniel's operational expertise. The article would eventually win a National Magazine Award for business journalism, though neither Victoria nor Daniel particularly enjoyed the attention that came with public recognition. As Daniel reviewed quarterly performance metrics in his office that Friday evening, he reflected on the extraordinary changes that had occurred since he accidentally left Colonel Sterling's book on Victoria's desk. The shy night janitor, who had once felt invisible in his own workplace, had become the chief operating officer of a billion-dollar corporation, responsible for the livelihoods of thousands of employees and the satisfaction of hundreds of clients. But more than personal advancement, Daniel felt pride in the systemic improvements that had made Sterling Industries more efficient, more profitable, and more responsive to both employee needs and market opportunities. The principles Colonel Sterling had taught him about leadership and service had found new application in corporate environments, proving that warrior values could enhance rather than conflict with business objectives. The worn copy of The Warrior ethos still sat on his desk, a daily reminder of the journey that had brought him to this position and the responsibilities that came with corporate leadership. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities to demonstrate that excellence could emerge from unexpected places when organizations had the courage to value merit over convention. The summer months brought unprecedented growth to Sterling Industries, with quarterly revenues exceeding projections by 42% and client satisfaction scores reaching all-time highs. The operational improvements Daniel had implemented were generating compound benefits, creating efficiency gains that freed up resources for innovation and market expansion. But success also brought new complexities that would test both his leadership abilities and the company's commitment to the values that had driven their transformation. The first major challenge emerged from an unexpected source: the federal government's decision to investigate Sterling Industries for potential bid rigging on defense contracts. The inquiry, initiated by a complaint from Blackwater Solutions following their rejected acquisition attempt, threatened to undermine the company's reputation and future contracting opportunities. Daniel first learned about the investigation when FBI agents appeared at Sterling's headquarters on a Tuesday morning in July, armed with federal subpoenas and authorization to examine financial records dating back 5 years. The agents were professional but thorough, requesting access to contract files, communication records, and executive calendars that could reveal any patterns of collusive bidding or improper client relationships. Victoria convened an emergency meeting of the executive committee within 2 hours of the agent's arrival, her usual composure strained by the implications of federal scrutiny. "This investigation could destroy everything we've built," she told the assembled executives, "regardless of whether we've actually done anything wrong. Federal investigations create uncertainty that clients can't tolerate, especially in defense." Contracting. Daniel had dealt with federal investigations during his military service, though usually as a witness rather than a target. His experience with military justice procedures provided valuable perspective on how to navigate the complex intersection of legal requirements and business necessities. "Our first priority has to be complete cooperation with the investigation," Daniel advised the committee. "Any appearance of obstruction will be interpreted as evidence of guilt, regardless of our actual innocence. We need legal counsel immediately, but we also need to maintain normal business operations to demonstrate confidence in our position." James Morrison, whose financial expertise made him particularly concerned about regulatory scrutiny, raised the question everyone was considering. "Daniel, cooperation is fine in principle, but federal investigations can take years to resolve. How do we maintain client confidence when every contract we bid might be scrutinized for evidence of wrongdoing?" By being completely transparent about our processes and demonstrating that our competitive advantages come from efficiency and innovation rather than improper relationships, Daniel replied. "If our operational improvements are legitimate, and they are, then investigation will ultimately validate our business model rather than undermining it." Victoria appreciated Daniel's calm analysis, but she understood the political dimensions of their situation better than anyone else in the room. "The problem isn't whether we've done anything wrong," she said. "The problem is that Blackwater has enough influence in Washington to make this investigation as disruptive as possible, regardless of its ultimate conclusions." The investigation's immediate impact was severe. 2 major clients postponed contract renewals pending resolution of the federal inquiry, while 3 prospective clients withdrew from active negotiations. Sterling's stock price dropped 18% in the week following news of the investigation, wiping out nearly $200 million in market capitalization. But the crisis also revealed the strength of the organizational culture Daniel and Victoria had built over the past year. Rather than panicking or abandoning ship, employees rallied around the leadership team with a loyalty that surprised even veteran executives. Department heads volunteered to work overtime without compensation to ensure that existing contracts were completed flawlessly, while support staff organized informal morale-building activities to maintain team cohesion during the uncertainty. Maria Santos, whose promotion from cleaning supervisor to assistant director of facilities management had made her a symbol of Sterling's commitment to merit-based advancement, organized a company-wide letter of support that was signed by over 90% of employees. The letter, addressed to Victoria and Daniel, expressed confidence in the company's integrity and commitment to continuing their work regardless of external pressures. "We know what this company was like before you changed it," the letter stated, "and we know what it's become under your leadership. No investigation can change the fact that you've created something special here, something worth fighting to preserve." Daniel was moved by the employee response, recognizing it as validation of the leadership principles Colonel Sterling had taught him about earning loyalty through service rather than demanding it through authority. During an all-hands meeting, called to address the investigation, he spoke about the importance of maintaining their values and operational excellence despite external challenges. "Federal investigations are serious matters that require our complete cooperation and professional response," Daniel told the assembled workforce, "but they don't change who we are or what we've accomplished together. Our competitive advantages come from the quality of our work and the efficiency of our operations, not from any improper practices." He paused, making eye contact with employees throughout the auditorium. "Colonel James Sterling, Victoria's father, once told me that true warriors are tested not by easy victories, but by how they respond when their integrity is questioned. This investigation gives us an opportunity to demonstrate that Sterling Industries is built on principles that can withstand any scrutiny." The speech was recorded by local news stations and subsequently went viral on social media, generating thousands of supportive comments from people who admired the company's response to adversity. Business publications praised Daniel's leadership during crisis, comparing his communication style favorably to corporate executives who typically relied on legal disclaimers and evasive language when facing regulatory challenges. More substantively, the investigation began to reveal evidence that supported Sterling's position. Federal auditors examining 5 years of contract records found no evidence of bid rigging, price fixing, or improper client relationships. Instead, they discovered a pattern of increasingly efficient operations that had allowed Sterling to submit competitive bids while maintaining healthy profit margins. The lead FBI investigator, Special Agent Catherine Walsh, was a 20-year veteran of white-collar crime investigations who had seen every form of corporate malfeasance imaginable. During her interview with Daniel, she was struck by his straightforward responses and detailed knowledge of operational procedures. "Mr. Martinez," Agent Walsh said during their formal interview, "your company's bid prices have decreased significantly over the past year, while your profit margins have remained stable. That pattern typically indicates either predatory pricing, designed to eliminate competition, or cost reductions, achieved through corner cutting, that compromises service quality." Daniel had anticipated this line of questioning and prepared comprehensive documentation to support his response. Agent Walsh: "Our cost reductions come from systematic elimination of operational inefficiencies that didn't add value for clients. I can provide detailed breakdowns of every change we've implemented, including the specific savings achieved and the methods used to maintain service quality." Over the course of a 4-hour interview, Daniel walked Agent Walsh through every major Operational improvement, from security consolidation to maintenance optimization to streamlined project management procedures. His military background was evident in the thoroughness of his documentation and his ability to explain complex systems in clear, logical terms. This level of systematic analysis is unusual in corporate environments, Agent Walsh observed. Most companies implement changes incrementally and struggle to document their cumulative impact. Your approach suggests either exceptional planning capabilities or deliberate preparation for external scrutiny. It reflects military training in operational planning and assessment, Daniel replied honestly. In Afghanistan, poor documentation could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. I've applied the same standards to corporate operations because the principles of systematic improvement are universal. Agent Walsh's subsequent interviews with Sterling employees confirmed Daniel's explanations and revealed unanimous support for the operational changes he had implemented. From senior executives to entry-level staff, everyone described improvements in efficiency, job satisfaction, and company performance that had occurred without any compromise in ethical standards. The investigation also uncovered evidence of Blackwater Solutions' attempt to recruit Sterling employees with access to sensitive operational information. Email records and phone logs revealed a coordinated intelligence-gathering effort designed to identify proprietary procedures that could be replicated by competitors. It appears that Blackwater's complaint may have been motivated more by competitive frustration than genuine concern about regulatory violations, Agent Walsh told Victoria during their final interview. Their recruitment efforts suggest they were trying to acquire through espionage what they couldn't obtain through acquisition. By September, the federal investigation was quietly concluded with no charges filed and no evidence of wrongdoing discovered. The official closure statement praised Sterling Industries for its cooperation and noted that the company's operational improvements represented innovative business practices that enhance rather than compromise competitive integrity. The vindication was complete, but the experience had changed Sterling Industries in subtle but important ways. The crisis had tested every relationship and procedure within the company, revealing strengths and weaknesses that might otherwise have remained hidden. More importantly, it had demonstrated that the organizational culture Daniel and Victoria had built was resilient enough to withstand external pressure without abandoning its core values. Victoria used the investigation's conclusion as an opportunity to implement additional transparency measures that would prevent similar challenges in the future. Sterling became one of the first companies in its industry to publish detailed operational procedures and efficiency metrics, creating a new standard for corporate openness that competitors found difficult to match. "We have nothing to hide," Victoria announced during a press conference following the investigation's closure. "Our competitive advantages come from operational excellence and innovative thinking, not from proprietary secrets or exclusive relationships. By being completely transparent about our methods, we're challenging the entire industry to compete on merit rather than influence." The Transparency Initiative generated significant positive publicity and attracted new clients who valued Sterling's commitment to ethical business practices. Several European companies, impressed by the company's response to regulatory scrutiny, began negotiations for long-term contracts that would expand Sterling's international presence significantly. Daniel found himself increasingly sought after as a speaker at business conferences and military leadership symposiums, where his unique perspective on applying military principles to corporate environments resonated with audiences facing similar challenges. Harvard Business School invited him to teach a guest seminar on operational leadership, while the Pentagon asked him to consult on efficiency improvements for military contracting procedures. But despite the external recognition and expanded opportunities, Daniel remained focused on Sterling Industries and the ongoing work of building an organization that honored the principles Colonel Sterling had taught him. During a quiet moment in his office one evening, he reflected on the inscription in his worn copy of the warrior ethos. Lead from the front, always. The federal investigation had been his most significant test of leadership under pressure, requiring him to maintain clarity and purpose while navigating legal complexities and media scrutiny. The experience had confirmed that the Warrior's Code could be applied effectively to any environment where courage and integrity were required to overcome fear and uncertainty. The book still sat on his desk, beside quarterly reports and strategic planning documents, a daily reminder that true leadership required the willingness to stand for principles even when standing alone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities to demonstrate that excellence emerged not from privilege or position, but from the courage to act on values that transcended individual self-interest. As autumn approached, Sterling Industries had not only survived its greatest crisis, but had emerged stronger and more respected than before. The investigation that was intended to destroy the company had instead validated its integrity and established new standards for transparency in defense contracting. Daniel's journey from invisible night janitor to nationally recognized business leader was nearly complete, but the most important work, building an organization that would honor Colonel Sterling's legacy for generations to come, was just beginning. The worn pages of the warrior ethos held their secrets close, but the principles they contained continued to guide decisions that shaped thousands of lives and influenced an entire industry. Sometimes the most powerful transformations began with the smallest acts of authenticity, and sometimes the books that found their way to the right people at the right time contained exactly the wisdom needed to change not just individual lives, but entire organizations and the communities they served. The autumn of Daniel's second year as Chief Operating Officer brought an unexpected opportunity that would test everything he had learned about leadership, sacrifice, and the true meaning of service. The Department of Defense issued a request for proposals on a massive infrastructure modernization project worth $3.2 billion over 5 years, the largest contract in Sterling Industries' history and potentially transformative for the entire defense contracting sector. The project, codenamed Operation Foundation, involved upgrading communications and security systems across 47 military installations worldwide. It represented exactly the kind of complex, multifaceted challenge that Sterling's operational innovations were designed to handle. But it also carried risks that could destroy the company if execution failed to meet the Pentagon's exacting standards. Victoria convened a special strategy session with the entire executive team to evaluate whether Sterling should pursue the contract. The conference room buzzed with nervous energy as department heads reviewed the 847-page solicitation document that outlined requirements spanning cybersecurity, physical infrastructure, logistics coordination, and international deployment capabilities. This contract would triple our annual revenue, Marcus Chen observed, his fingers dancing across his tablet as he calculated potential financial impacts. But it would also require us to expand our workforce by 70% and establish operational capabilities in 12 countries where we currently have no presence. Sarah Rodriguez had been analyzing the operational requirements with growing concern. The timeline is aggressive, even for a company with established international infrastructure. We'd have 18 months to achieve full operational capability across 4 continents while maintaining our existing client commitments. James Morrison, whose financial conservatism had proven valuable during the federal investigation, raised the question that everyone was considering. The revenue potential is extraordinary, but the risk exposure could bankrupt us if we encounter significant cost overruns or performance penalties. Are we certain we have the organizational capacity to handle something this large? Daniel had been studying the solicitation with the same systematic attention he had once applied to mission planning in Afghanistan. The project's complexity reminded him of coordinating multi-unit operations across hostile terrain, where success required precise execution of interdependent tasks under constantly changing conditions. The technical requirements are within our capabilities, Daniel told the assembled executives. Our operational improvements over the past 2 years have prepared us for exactly this kind of challenge. But the real question isn't whether we can do the work. It's whether we can do it while maintaining the quality standards and corporate culture that define who we are. Victoria had been quietly considering the strategic implications of the contract since receiving the solicitation the previous week. Operation Foundation represented an opportunity to establish Sterling Industries as a dominant force in defense contracting. But it also carried the risk of transforming the company into something unrecognizable from its current form. Let's approach this systematically, Victoria said, her voice carrying the authority that had guided Sterling through its most challenging periods. Daniel, I want you to lead a cross-functional team in developing a comprehensive capability assessment. If we can demonstrate that we can execute this contract without compromising our operational standards or corporate values, then we'll pursue it aggressively. The capability assessment consumed 3 weeks of intensive analysis, with teams working around the clock to evaluate every aspect of the proposed contract. Daniel organized the effort like a military planning operation, with specialized working groups focusing on technical requirements, financial projections, risk assessment, and organizational development. The technical team, led by Marcus Chen, confirmed that Sterling's cybersecurity capabilities were sufficient for the contract's most demanding requirements. The company's innovations in integrated security systems had created competitive advantages that larger contractors couldn't easily replicate, giving Sterling a legitimate opportunity to win despite competing against firms with 10 times their resources. The financial analysis, supervised by James Morrison, revealed that the contract could generate profits exceeding $400 million over 5 years if executed efficiently. But it also identified potential cost overruns that could exceed $200 million if operational problems developed, making project management absolutely critical to financial success. The organizational assessment proved most challenging, requiring Daniel to evaluate whether Sterling's culture of innovation and accountability could survive the rapid expansion necessary to handle such a massive contract. Military experience had taught him that organizations often lost their essential character when they grew too quickly, transforming from agile units into bureaucratic institutions that prioritized process over performance. Maria Santos, whose rise from cleaning supervisor to facilities management had made her a trusted advisor on organizational dynamics, provided crucial insights during the assessment process. Mr. Martinez, she said during one of their planning sessions, the people who made this company special are the ones who feel like they matter, like their work contributes to something important. If we grow so fast that people become anonymous, again, we'll lose what makes us different from other contractors. Daniel appreciated Maria's perspective and incorporated it into his recommendations for managing organizational expansion. Rather than simply hiring additional staff, he proposed a structured growth plan that would maintain Sterling's distinctive culture while building capacity for the massive contract. We'll establish regional operations centers that function as semi-autonomous units, Daniel explained to the executive team during his final briefing. Each center will replicate our current organizational structure and operational procedures, allowing us to scale capacity without sacrificing the personals, relationships and accountability that drive our performance. The proposal also included comprehensive training programs that would ensure new employees understood Sterling's values and operational philosophy before assuming critical responsibilities. Daniel's military background influenced this approach, recognizing that successful organizations required shared understanding of mission and purpose that transcended individual job descriptions. Victoria was impressed by the thoroughness of Daniel's assessment and the innovative solutions he had developed for managing unprecedented growth. "This is exactly the kind of strategic thinking that convinced me to promote you," she told him during their weekly one-on-one meeting. "You've identified not just what we need to do, but how we can do it without losing who we are." The decision to pursue Operation Foundation was unanimous among the executive team, though everyone understood that submission of their proposal would mark the beginning of the most challenging period in Sterling's corporate history. The proposal itself required 6 months to prepare, involving detailed technical specifications, financial projections, and organizational charts that demonstrated Sterling's capacity to handle the Pentagon's most demanding requirements. Daniel led the proposal development effort with the same intensity he had brought to combat operations, coordinating input from dozens of subject matter experts while maintaining overall coherence and strategic focus. The final document comprised 1,247 pages of technical analysis, cost breakdowns, and implementation timelines that represented thousands of hours of preparation by Sterling's most talented personnel. The proposal's innovative elements reflected Sterling's operational philosophy and competitive advantages. Rather than simply promising to meet the Pentagon's requirements, Sterling proposed enhancements that would exceed specifications while reducing long-term maintenance costs. The company's experience with systematic efficiency improvements had identified opportunities for innovation that larger, more bureaucratic contractors had missed. "We're not just bidding to execute this contract," Daniel explained during the proposal's final review session. "We're proposing to transform how the military thinks about infrastructure modernization by demonstrating that smaller, more agile organizations can deliver superior results through innovative approaches." The proposal submission occurred on a snowy December morning, with Daniel personally delivering the documents to the Pentagon's contracting office. As he handed over the culmination of 6 months' intensive work, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought him from night janitor to potential leader of the defense industry's largest infrastructure project. The evaluation process would take 4 months, during which Sterling would continue normal operations while preparing for potential contract award. The uncertainty was challenging for employees who understood that their company's future depended on decisions being made in Pentagon conference rooms by evaluators they would never meet. Victoria used this period to strengthen Sterling's organizational culture and operational capabilities, recognizing that contract award would bring challenges that could overwhelm unprepared systems. She authorized Daniel to implement expanded training programs and enhanced communication procedures that would prepare the company for rapid growth while maintaining performance standards. The cultural preparation proved prescient when Sterling received notification in March that they had been selected as one of 3 finalists for Operation Foundation. The announcement triggered immediate speculation in defense industry publications, with analysts expressing surprise that a relatively small contractor had survived initial evaluation against established giants like Blackwater Solutions and Raytheon Defense Systems. Sterling Industries' selection as a finalist represents one of the most significant upsets in recent defense contracting history, reported Defense Weekly. Their innovative approach to operational efficiency and proven track record of exceeding performance standards has apparently impressed Pentagon evaluators despite their limited experience with contracts of this magnitude. The final evaluation phase required Sterling to demonstrate their capabilities through detailed presentations and facility inspections by Pentagon teams. Daniel coordinated these activities with military precision, ensuring that every aspect of Sterling's operations reflected the excellence and professionalism that had driven their success. The presentation to the Pentagon evaluation team took place in Sterling's headquarters conference room, with Victoria and Daniel leading a comprehensive review of their proposed approach to Operation Foundation. The presentation lasted 6 hours, covering technical specifications, management procedures, risk mitigation strategies, and organizational development plans. General Patricia Williams, who led the Pentagon evaluation team, was a decorated logistics officer with extensive experience in complex infrastructure projects. Her questions were penetrating and detailed, designed to test whether Sterling's innovative proposals could withstand the reality of large-scale military operations. "Mr. Martinez," General Williams said during the presentation's technical segment, "your proposal promises significant cost savings through operational efficiency improvements. How do you ensure that cost reduction doesn't compromise security or reliability in mission-critical systems?" Daniel had anticipated this question and prepared a comprehensive response. "General Williams, our experience has shown that true efficiency comes from eliminating waste and redundancy, not from reducing essential capabilities. Every cost reduction we propose has been tested in our own operations and proven to enhance rather than compromise performance quality." He clicked to a detailed slide showing Sterling's operational improvements over the past 2 years. For example, our security consolidation reduced costs by 30% while improving response times and coverage consistency. The savings came from eliminating overlapping procedures and communication gaps, not from reducing security personnel or capabilities. General Williams nodded approvingly. "That's consistent with what we've observed during our facility inspections. Your operations appear to be exceptionally well organized and efficient without any obvious shortcuts or compromises." The presentation concluded with Victoria's strategic vision for how Operation Foundation would strengthen America's defense infrastructure while establishing new standards for contractor performance and accountability. Her remarks emphasized Sterling's commitment to service and excellence that transcended mere profit maximization. "General Williams, this contract represents more than business opportunity for Sterling Industries," Victoria said in closing. "It represents a chance to honor the sacrifice and dedication of the men and women who serve our country by providing them with the most advanced, reliable infrastructure possible. That mission drives everything we do." The evaluation team's final report, submitted to Pentagon leadership 2 weeks later, praised Sterling's innovative approach and demonstrated capabilities, while noting the risks associated with awarding such a large contract to a relatively small organization. The decision ultimately rested with Defense Secretary Robert Hayes, whose approval would transform Sterling Industries overnight into one of America's largest defense contractors. Daniel received the call on a Thursday afternoon in April, exactly 2 years after accidentally leaving Colonel Sterling's book on Victoria's desk. Secretary Hayes personally informed him that Sterling had been selected for Operation Foundation, effective immediately upon contract signature. "Mr. Martinez, Secretary." Hayes said, "This decision was based entirely on merit and capability assessment. Your company's proposal was simply superior to alternatives from much larger organizations. we're confident that Sterling Industries will set new standards for excellence in defense contracting. As Daniel hung up the phone and walked to Victoria's office to share the news, he carried with him the worn copy of The Warrior Ethos that had started this entire journey. The book's inscription seemed more meaningful now than ever. Lead from the front, always. Tomorrow would bring the beginning of the most challenging mission of his career. But tonight, Daniel felt the deep satisfaction that came from proving that excellence could emerge from the most unexpected places when guided by principles that transcended individual ambition.